Stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you are the stakeholder in your own survival. We are your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC. And today, Chris, we're going to go into some of the kind of weird and offbeat, I guess I would say, non-traditional preps that we have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a feeling this is going to be a little unhinged at points, but I promise each one of these items actually has a purpose.
When we said weird preps, I bet a bunch of people have a bunch of different ideas about what they mean. And these are all just things in my mind that people just didn't think about. No one's going to go, well, you're a lunatic. I think they're going to go, wow, that's just a good idea I hadn't thought about. So ideally, these aren't weird. They're just maybe things you hadn't thought about. But, before we jump into that, a couple of housekeeping items. I do want to say, I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Amy, and I'm going to say Amy B because I don't know if the B was like her middle name or her last name, but we have a lot of listeners. We have like way more than I thought we would at this point.
Yeah, we do.
We do. But Amy is probably our first binge listener. She sent us, and I could not listen to me talk for 10 hours. I could maybe listen to you talk for 10 hours, Chris, but definitely not me. And she has an insanely long commute on the train into the city every morning. And she sent us a quick little note and she was like, hey, I'll be through 11 episodes by Monday. So just a shout out to her because I think she probably is our first true binge listener, which is just cool.
Which is epic. I mean, we've got listeners in 12 countries now. It's kind of weird to be international, but it's such a cool feeling.
I don't know how much of our stuff is truly applicable for international stuff because a lot of it's like guns and whiskey and bacon and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like. But anyway, and then I want to reminder for everybody our contingency medical code, which is just kind of cool. I actually used it myself and went and got myself a new round of antibiotics. I had an old one and they do lose efficacy over the years, so I think I probably got that one 2 or 3 years ago. I won't throw it out, I'll hang on to it, but I used my my health savings account this year and went and used our code and got another round from Contingency Medical. So anybody that hasn't heard already, you just go to their website and enter code stakeholder10 for $10 off anything on their site.
Yeah, make your money work harder for you.
Yep.
That's
and
for
we
sure.
make nothing on that. We're not sponsored. We're not pushing it. We don't get anything. That's just, they did that for our listeners and I'm happy they did.
And that not throwing out the old one, that's kind of the 2 is 1, 1 is none.
That's right.
Mentality.
I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I actually got a spot to fit that in, but yeah, you're right.
Perfect. Well, before we jump into our list, I do also want to remind everybody that we do still have tickets available to Homestead. The new movie from Angel Studios, it drops on December 20th. So all you have to do to get 2 free tickets to Homestead at the show place and time of your choice, show us proof that you are sharing the podcast, whether it's a Facebook post, Twitter post, even just an email to a friend. Give us a little bit of hype. Send us a screenshot of that to stakeholderprepping@gmail.com. And you will get 2 free tickets. We've already done it for several listeners. We do still have some left. So hurry and don't miss out on an awesome opportunity to see a brand new movie.
Yeah, I'm actually looking really forward to it. I got my tickets too, and it looks cool. It looks awesome. It's a prepper's movie, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, just help us out. This isn't easy for us. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and it doesn't make sense unless you people listening are happy with what you're hearing from us. And it doesn't make sense unless we have enough listeners that, that we're making a difference. That's all Chris and I ever wanted to do with this. We never wanted to make a dime off it. We're not. It's pretty expensive for us to do this. So we just want to get good, solid, timeless, and actionable intel out there. So tell your friends and help us out, and you'll get a cool prize.
Excellent. I'm loving it. Well, should we jump into the list? Do you want to go first? Do I go first?
Oh, you go ahead. And this is I'll give you a little a little prelude here that looking at the items, it's completely different because I'm coming at this just from a very like lock myself in my home and never leave when SHTF happens. And Chris, yours are a little more like these are useful if if I get stuck in the car. These are useful if I have to bug out and those kinds of things. So it's interesting the way you and I came at this because we didn't just write these down and say you take this one, you take this one. We truly came up with kind of weird things we do on our own that a lot of people we know in that preparedness community don't do. And ours are completely different for completely different reasons. So I think it's really cool. But yeah, why don't you go first?
And I promise it's not just 500,000 square feet of aluminum foil. I promise I'm not just making clothes out of aluminum foil here.
And mine is not just 4,000 rounds of 30 carbine. I promise. It didn't even make the list, but I think we would agree it'd be kind of weird.
It could be interesting to see chainmail made out of 30 carbine rounds. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I'm going to kick things off. This is something that is in my kit. It's actually in my inch bag, which is I'm never coming home. Instead of a bug out bag, you've got an inch bag, which has a lot more stuff in it. But dual strand thin copper wire, like telephone wire, the old school stuff, not the Cat5 or, Ethernet cable that you plug your computer into when you're getting set up for work at home and then call it and that's it.
Okay.
But dual strand thin copper wire. And the reason this is in my kit, I've got a spool of about 500 feet of it. It can be used as an emergency antenna extension for communications. If you remember in We Were Soldiers, you see where they're doing a run through the woods in Georgia and comes up on this radio operator and he's got the little almost film canister spool draped across the trees.
Yeah, based on the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young.
Yes. And he's picking up atmospheric bounce from guys that are in contact in Vietnam and they're listening to it live. That's one of those things where if you know how to do it and how to set it up and where your contacts are, you can get about 90 miles worth of range out of your little Baofeng 5V radio.
Yeah, sure. If you can work out the atmospheric skip and figure out where the repeaters are, you're adding dB gain to the antenna, right? You have to know what you're doing, I guess.
Exactly. So it does take a little bit of trial and error if you've never done it before. I have a lot of communications training through my satellite control phase, but it's certainly something that you can use as an emergency extension for comms. It can also be bundled up if you need to link batteries in either series or parallel. You can actually cut those wires and braid it into a heavier gauge wire so that you can, theoretically, you could jumpstart a car off of telephone wire. And then if you do have devices like, say, a AAA battery slot, or you've got a AAA battery, but your device takes a AA, the AAA is a little bit shorter, it's not going to fit. You can cut a small piece of that wire and kind of bundle it up to make up that gap. They are the same voltage, so they will still power that AA device, even though the battery itself doesn't fit. You can do it with little balls of aluminum foil, but I don't recommend doing that because that gets hot. The copper, it tends to be a little bit more temperature controlled and less likely to melt your TV remote in your hand.
Sure. I would add to that, having a wireless soldering iron. Either they have battery operated soldering irons and they have gas operated, like a butane soldering iron. But if you had a little copper wire, you could do a lot of stuff like you're talking about. Like you could make a 12-volt battery out of enough AA batteries and things like that with this with enough braided copper wire. Also, copper, like we talked about, I think it was last episode, we talked about you could actually make a battery with copper. You have copper and then some other dissimilar metal like like zinc or a nail or something, then yeah, you could actually make a battery if you have enough copper. So yeah, copper I think is key there. Aluminum's lighter. Aluminum doesn't quite have the energy transfer of copper. But yeah, I would add a little soldering iron to that, get up, and then yeah, you could do a whole lot of stuff with just a little bit of copper wire.
May have to add a soldering iron now. That's
I have
a
one.
really good
I
point.
have one. It's basically like a little mini torch, but I think the torch is, let's say, like inside, so behind the nozzle that you would solder on. So all that fire is doing is heating up the pokey part of the soldering iron, and
Okay.
and then yeah, with just a little bit of solder, you can get in anything, and they're butane powered. So you just push the little butane can into it, load them up, and they run for a while. But yeah, a little soldering iron, then yeah, you're getting into all kinds of cool stuff when you have copper wire.
I like it.
Cool. So my first one, and yeah, we are going to go back and forth. This is going to be completely different stuff. Mine is UPSs, and not the dude in brown that messes your packages up, but an uninterrupted power source. If you guys are aware of these, it's basically a surge protector that has a battery in it. And I have a couple of these throughout the house. Basically what it does is it protects against power surges like EMPs or brownouts from the power lines, things like that. But it also allows you some amount of time to shut your electronics down properly. So anybody who works in IT or works in an office building right now, those people understand exactly what a UPS is, and they're very useful. They also have little USB outputs on them as well. So, here the scenario would be power goes out in the middle of the night. Is it the big one, or is it just a tree fell over the line? Well, since the TV in your bedroom is on a UPS, you can turn it on and check out the news, because you probably have 30 to 45 minutes on one of these simple UPSs. You could grab your cell phone and plug this thing into your UPS to make sure your battery's at 100% if you're going to be out for a while. So very versatile. You could run your refrigerator for a little bit. They don't run that long because obviously you're converting just a couple little 12-volt batteries to AC power. But for example, a $200 UPS, and I've got a bunch of these, that might be a 1500 VA is the capacity. So it's a volt amp, which basically is like a 900 watt hour battery, I guess. But one of those could typically run at full load for maybe 3 to 9 minutes. But
Okay.
the run time increases as the load decreases. So you could probably run your refrigerator for like an hour on one of these. You might be able to run your TV and your satellite/cable box for maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So that's enough time to actually turn on the news, check things out, see if something bad happened. Also, most standard USB ports, like the thing you plug your phone into every night, they have some kind of built-in protection against minor electrical fluctuations, but they are not inherently surge resistant, and they can be damaged with a significant enough power surge. So if you had one of these things in your bedroom, they don't make any noise till they turn on, till the power actually goes out, then a fan starts up. But you could just leave your cell phone plugged into one of the USB ports on this thing and be protected against major power surges, maybe some CME and EMP type stuff. And yeah, so it's just a very useful thing. I have a couple of these. I have one on my internet, and I have one on a TV and satellite unit in my bedroom. So if the power goes out in the middle of the night, I guess my security cameras are on it too, because those are basically a computer. Those run on a hard drive. So if you just kill the power, or they see dirty power, you could mess those up the same way you could mess up a computer. So,
I gotcha.
if the power goes out in the middle of the night, I will get up, and I've got enough time to turn the generator on if I want to. I have enough time to power down the electronics that need to be powered down properly, and I can turn on the news, and I can get on my phone on the internet, and I can see if, is this the big one, or is it just a simple power outage? So yeah, these are just a really cool idea to have. Just, I wouldn't say it's like backup power. It doesn't like replace a generator, but as far as having enough time to shut your electronics down. And if it's not going to be a very long power outage, you could leave your refrigerator plugged into one of these a little longer, and not have to come up with a contingency plan for everything in your refrigerator for an hour or two longer. So that'd be my second one, the UPS. Actually, I think the technical definition is an uninterrupted power supply, not an uninterrupted power source, but you get the idea.
Yeah, and I've dealt with UPS devices while deployed. I've
Sure.
also dealt with them while stateside.
Mhm.
They are extremely convenient for what they do. They do, depending on the load, have a very limited life. There was one system that when the power went out, we had 3 minutes to shut down everything that was on
Sure.
that circuit because it was going to go
Yeah, it was
in
at
3 minutes.
full load. Also, a UPS, I don't know if you've ever taken one apart, but I'm a crazy person and I did that. And inside, it's just two of those little sealed lead acid 6 amp hour batteries. That's all that's inside of those. And anybody who knows anything about lead acid batteries, the first time you drain them all the way down to zero, they can be worthless. You might have to put an equalization charge on there and try to knock off some of the gunk that builds between the plates. But yeah, there's just two 12-volt batteries, and they're ran in series. So it's basically a 24-volt, 6 amp hour battery is all that's in there. So yeah, think about that, there's not a lot of power in there. And the first time you run them all the way to zero, they're done working for a while. So yeah, you might have to replace the batteries in those, but those little batteries are cheap. If you look on Amazon at the 6 amp hour sealed lead acid batteries, they're very inexpensive.
I am way too afraid that I will let the magic smoke out of the electronics if I try
yeah.
to take
No,
one apart.
those are actually meant to, it's just like 4 screws in the front. They're kind of meant to come apart. They're kind of hard to get back together, honestly. But they make a lithium iron phosphate equivalent to that little battery. So you could get 2 better batteries if you wanted to, get really crazy and make those things a little better. And the one thing about lithium batteries is they can be drained all the way down to zero and not inherently damage them. So if you did want to be a little crazy, there's some cooler stuff you can do with those as well.
I like it. And
So
my next one is also along the lines of electronics.
Mhm.
But this is something that I think is important and not a lot of people actually consider as a threat.
okay.
So we each have a copy of a USB thumbstick,
Mhm.
just a little 16 gig. I think it's actually like 8 gig stick, but it has copies of our driver's licenses, our insurance policy, the titles to the cars, the life insurance policies, DD-214s for both me and my wife, since both of us served. We have all of our critical information on there, just in case we ever do have to leave in the middle of the night. And we have had a situation where there was a grass fire back when we lived in Colorado, and it was less than a block from our house. So we were under mandatory evacuation. We got all the dogs wrapped up in the truck and out the door in about 12 minutes.
That's impressive.
We had our go bags ready to go. We had that thumbstick in there. And really, it's if you forget something and that just stays in your go bag, if you forget your wallet,
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to suck. But you can get a replacement debit card. It's a lot harder to go stand in line at the DMV, have them pull all of your driving records, and then you have to pay any overdue court fines or speeding tickets or parking tickets or anything like that before you can get a new copy of your driver's license. But as long as you can provide a copy of it, then they don't usually have to pull your whole driving record. They don't have to re-fingerprint you or do whatever they do
Yeah.
to find you if you can present a copy of your old driver's license. Especially if you end up changing states, that's something that just not enough people really think about, is how much of your life you can get onto a 16 gig
I was
flash drive.
just gonna say that it's such a massive amount of space available, and all you're doing is putting pictures of stuff and information on there. You're not putting videos on there. So you can put so much stuff. I carry something like that. I carry a little micro SD card with me when I travel internationally with all that stuff, but mainly just so I have a copy of like my passport. So if something happened to my passport, I could go to the US Embassy, prove who I am, get an emergency passport and get out of there. So yeah, I mean, it's a super valuable thing to have. And I think you're right. A lot of people don't think about that, but the amount of stuff you can fit on a simple USB stick, like, yeah, your copies, your driver's licenses and your titles and your insurance information is a big one. Because think about it, if you've got to evacuate, your house burns down, knowing who to call immediately, they can get you help immediately. Your insurance company probably can give you a few $100 to get you into a hotel quickly, those kinds of things. So having that information, just, yeah, that's huge. So where do you keep those? Like, are those in a safe or something? Where do you keep those when you know you're going to need them?
So we keep one in our bug out bag and then one in the glove compartment of our vehicles.
Got it. Okay.
So it's just tucked back in there. It's way back in the back there. We know it's in there, but it's not something that we regularly, pull out and check. Oh, is this
Sure.
something that I'm carrying with me every day? It's not like, a chamber check on your carry piece. It's not making sure that the blade that you are carrying that day is tucked into the right pocket at the right angle.
Sure.
It's there.
Yep.
I do update it once a year. Every time that we get a new document, that's when I collect them up, update them, and then put them back in their spots.
Forget about it until you need it.
Yeah. And exactly that. If your house did catch fire and you don't know, where those documents are, you can expand this as well. And we've kind of started to do this. We have been downloading a whole bunch of how-to manuals and theory books and things like that. And we put them on a 1 terabyte hard drive.
Yep.
So that just stays in the bug out bag. And if we ever did have to disappear, it's got things like how to make a windlass, how to make a winch, how to generate power from alternate methods, how to wash your clothes, how to make soap, just things like that. And not all of it will fit onto that little thumb drive, but the important stuff, the identifying information is on that thumb drive.
Yeah, it's funny you said it because this should have been on my list and I just forgot about it till you said that. But I was a BlackBerry guy for a very long time. In fact, this is going to blow some people's mind. Check it out. I am right now on my second phone post BlackBerry. That's how recent I was a BlackBerry guy. I was the last guy on a BlackBerry. Like there was a reel-to-reel tape player in Ottawa and it was just mine, man, or Waterloo, wherever they are, some weird Canadian word, but I'm not kidding. So, but check this out. So I'm not kidding. One of my favorite phones ever is called the BlackBerry Passport. Anybody that's seen one, it's the size of a passport. It's this weird like square rectangle-y thing, but it's got the full keyboard and it has a 4:3 aspect ratio display, but it has a micro SD card slot. And my old BlackBerry Passport, I did this about 6 months ago. I took it, I went on eBay, I bought a new battery for like $13. I took the thing apart, put a new battery in it, and then I did exactly what you just said. I put like about, I want to say 1,200 survivalist books on there. You can go, there's a guy that sells them like on Etsy. I bet there's somebody on eBay too, but it was like $10. It's all public domain stuff. So like old, like survivalist magazines and a lot of bushcraft stuff and a lot of medical stuff, just all kinds of very cool stuff on a little USB card. I put it on a micro SD. It's in the BlackBerry Passport, and that is in a Faraday bag in my safe. So if anything ever happens, I've got
your own little pocket library.
Your little pocket library computer. Yeah, and that actually should have gone on my list. I didn't even think about it because that's pretty freaking weird, but I am very glad I have it. And I've gone through a lot of that stuff, but I'm not kidding. It's like, I want to say it's 12 or 1,600 books, and they're just all different kind of public domain survival books, some like anarchist cookbook stuff, a lot of different magazine articles, just all kinds of stuff, a ton of information. And I just put it on a micro SD. It's in the phone's in a Faraday bag, and I pull it out about maybe once every 6 months to charge the battery on it.
Very nice.
And then forget about it.
That is one of those things where if you don't have the money, you don't have the $12, or just don't trust somebody to have your credit card information or anything like that, almost all of the Army field manuals and the Department in the Army DA manuals, FMs and TMs, field manuals and technical manuals. Unless it is a classified program operating under still classified information, all of those are public domain, and you just have to search for them and download them. I know one of my favorites is probably FM5 TAC 31, which is booby traps. That one's always
I know
some
that
late night
manual.
reading.
In fact, they are all on there. But yeah, the Army Field Manual's on there too. Yeah, there's all kinds of great stuff. Did you know that you could use dandelion root as a substitute for coffee?
I think I knew that one. I know you can use chicory.
It's in the manual, man. Yeah, it's in the Army Field Manual. There's some cool stuff in there. Yeah, that's on there though. You're right. The Army Field Manual has some really cool stuff, especially like improvised structures. I've gone out backpacking before, and me and a buddy have, built a couple of like the lean-to-y type structures that we found in the Army Field Manual. Because yeah, the Army Field Manual is awesome. Like you said, it's not classified. So yeah, that's a really good one to have on your little USB card when you really go. But that's kind of like having the old phone. I bet everybody has an old phone laying around. And that's the cool thing about the old phone is you've got a display. You don't need to plug it into anything. You could just put that information on the phone. Now, the bad thing about the phone, obviously, is it needs a battery. But yeah.
I like it.
So
what else is next?
So, okay, this is actually very inexpensive, and this is pretty weird. I bet I'm the only person who's thought of this. I would like to know if someone else has, because this was just, me having a crazy idea. But, I have a couple of gun safes, and they're electronic locks, and they're decent. I mean, they're built in the USA. They're really good safes, but they don't have the little pull the electronic lock off and have the key behind them. Mine are just electronic lock, and there's a 9-volt batteries in there. And so I was kind of worried about an EMP type situation, some kind of coronal mass ejection or EMP that might take those a little electronic locks off. So what I did is, and this is, again, going to sound kind of crazy. I don't know if it works, but it's worth a shot. So I took a regular styrofoam hose bib cover, and anybody who lives somewhere where it freezes probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyone in Florida right now probably has no idea what this is. But basically, it's just a little, I don't know, a pyramid-shaped piece of styrofoam that fits over your hose spigot outside, and it just insulates it a little bit so your pipes don't freeze. I took one of these, and I covered it inside and out completely in copper tape, real actual copper tape. And I completely covered it, both sides. It's just a big block of copper with a, piece of styrofoam inside. And these things are inexpensive. They're $1. But that happens to fit exactly over the little electronic lock on my safe. It'll sit there on its own. I put a little piece of, like sticky tape there, but just so it doesn't fall off. But yeah, like a piece of Velcro would do it too. And it covers my little electronic lock. So the rest of the safe is all very heavy gauge metal. The back of that locking mechanism is all very heavy gauge metal. So I don't know a lot about the Faraday cage thing. I don't think a lot of people really know what is going to survive an EMP or a CME, because we don't know how bad they're going to be, right? They are a variable. But maybe for me, it's just simply peace of mind, but it was a couple of bucks worth of equipment. And I made this little copper Faraday cover that sits perfectly over the little combo lock to my safe.
That's really cool. I had not thought of that. That's one of those things where it's kind of necessity is the mother of invention.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know if it would hold up to an EMP on the metal skin of the safe itself.
Right. Yeah. So because if you think about the safe itself, it's double layered metal, and there's some insulation fire break material inside, but the door to the safe obviously kind of wraps all the way around. So I think the thing is, no one would really know. Now, I would tell you that if you took a 1,000,000-volt stun gun and you zapped that keypad, it would probably kill the keypad. But if you zapped this piece of copper on top of it, I would be willing to bet that it will not damage that keypad. So, there's obviously some amount of electrical protection. But again, I'm an electrician. I don't know. And it really seems like nobody really knows what an EMP could actually do, because they are a variable. They can be really bad or they can be not really bad. So anyway, it's just, for me, it's kind of like very inexpensive insurance. And if it saves anything, I'll be patting myself on the back.
you can't complain there. And it kind of falls into my next one about the necessity is the mother of invention, but
Mhm.
it's my next one is actually climbing harness and gear, and this is
Okay.
something that sits in my truck underneath the little the back seat stowaway area.
Mhm.
I keep my climbing harness and extra carabiners, chalk, 100 yard rope in there, which that's heavy. I also keep 100 foot rope in there of static line, and just one of those things where you never know when you may have to scale a sheer face, or
Sure.
if you come up on a car accident where somebody has gone down a ravine, and you can anchor off to your tow hitch or something like that, or
Mhm.
even your door handle, something to that effect. If you can get down and then have a way to get back up without getting stuck there, it can grant you access to other places. If the first floor during the zombie apocalypse has all been barricaded at the mall by the survivors that are holed up in their Dawn of the Dead style,
Uh-huh.
but you've got your climbing harness. They didn't board up the second floor windows.
Right. Yeah.
Did anyone notice that?
Yeah, of course not. Well, zombies can't climb too well, I guess.
But it can also, if you are on the move on foot, worst case scenario, you can hoist yourself up into a tree and avoid predators that way.
Well, sure.
You're not going to stay away from things like bobcats or mountain lions because they're just
Mhm.
going to come up there and nibble on your toes anyways. But it could save you some pretty painful bites from things like coyotes, wolves, potentially a bear if it doesn't just knock your entire tree over with you in it. But yeah, having a climbing harness to tie yourself off in. The other part, and this is something that I have seen done in training,
Mhm.
is getting a climbing harness onto somebody and bracing their back, and then using the entire climbing harness as a modified improvised Skedco, which is basically a litter. So they were hauling somebody up just by the harness, and they had their back braced with more or less a piece of PVC,
Oh, yeah, sure.
and they strapped them to a single piece of PVC and had that harness on and lifted them up one piece
Oh, wow.
straight as a board. And they couldn't have done that had they not had that spare climbing harness for them. So just one of those things where it's an adaptability issue. I used to climb back in the day. I
Mhm.
don't anymore. I should get back into it for the cardio and the strength training. But if you're out of practice like I am, if you don't climb regularly, you're going to hit muscle fatigue. You're going to
Oh.
fall.
Yeah.
You don't want to fall 50 feet without something to catch you because it's
Now-
going to hurt.
Do you have you have some kind of ascender with you then too, so you can climb the rope?
I have an ascender, a manual ascender. It's not one of the cool Call of Duty powered ones. that you just
but
click it
yeah.
on and
Yeah,
zip
you
up the
can-
rope.
You can go up a stuck rope, get your footing, go up the stuck rope, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
have an ascender. I also have belay equipment, so I can self belay. I have a slew of carabiners. I probably have more carabiners attached to my harness than is necessary. It's probably another 10 pounds that I'm lifting with. But I can basically set up to winch myself into just about anywhere. And if I'm really, really feeling creative or spicy, I can always throw a fishing line up over a pole or something
Yeah.
like that, pull down on the other side, attach that rope and send that up, and I can get up in the middle of nowhere. I don't have to climb up a wall.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have a. Do you know what throw bag is?
I think
It's
so.
it's basically it's a bunch of rope in a bag, and you tie one end off in the bag because it's so full of rope. You can actually throw this thing, and it's a maritime rescue tool. So you can tie the bag off or tie the rope off on one end and throw this bag, and as it goes, this pretty beefy dynamic line kind of spools out the back, and you could, I don't know, it's like throwing a football with an anchor on the end. You could probably throw it 20 or 30 or 40 feet, but if someone is in fast moving water, it's a very strong rope. It's not meant for climbing, but I would trust my life to it. It is a very beefy rope, but I have a throw bag with me, just because I do a lot of, maritime stuff. But I always wear a Bison's design belt that is a certified, belay belt. It's just a belt with a piece of titanium on it that can hoist you up. So yeah, I could do it. I've done some body rappelling, so you could do a body rappel. I could get down. I don't think I could get back up right now, but I could probably get down somewhere with what I generally carry as, the loadout in my vehicle.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, is coming across a situation you may not
Mhm.
recognize that you're coming up to and being able to get out of it.
Yep, absolutely. So, my next one, this is a fun one, and this is something I bet a lot of people know about these, especially the gun people, but chamber inserts. And for those that don't know, there's a few people that make these, but basically they turn your firearm into a smaller caliber firearm. I really like the 12 gauge ones because 12 gauge is just sort of universal. Now, generally speaking, they're long, so they don't work in like a pump action 12 gauge. They work in a break open 12 gauge. But for not a lot of money, you can turn that break open 12 gauge into a bunch of different firearms. And these things they're rifles. So if you go to like gunadapters.com, and as always, we will post this stuff on our website. But if you go to gunadapters.com, you can get like an 8-inch rifled insert for a 12 gauge for somewhere between 130 and 150 bucks. So, that would fire like a 9mm ACP or a 9mm Luger or 45 ACP, or, even a 380. I think there's a couple of different chamber inserts. They probably have 6 or 7 or 8 different calibers. But basically, it's just a very versatile thing. If you're someone that really only has one firearm and you may not have a lot of ammo and you want to shoot ammo that's available. Something else I like, if you're a judge guy like me, like I like the 410 revolvers. There's the Taurus Judge is a great one. That's my backpacking gun. And the Smith & Wesson Governor has, I think it's a 6-shot instead of a 5-shot. So it's got a little more practicality there. But these guys at Gun Adapters, they sell 410 inserts. So you could fire a 32 ACP, or you could fire a 9mm out of a 410 revolver, and it's rifled, so it will do all right out the end of the barrel. It's not just flying away everywhere. So I really like these. I have one it's a 32 ACP, which is a weird caliber anyway, but I have one for a 308 bolt gun, and it's the 32 ACP fits right down the barrel. It uses the same rifling as the gun. It just fires it out of a 308. So your windage is kind of spot on. The bullet drop is a lot different. That thing's basically rolling out of the end of the barrel at that point. But, if you want to shoot small game on your property and don't want to alert the neighbors, 32 ACP out of a long gun is very, very quiet. So out of a 308, you could fire one of these. I think that's pretty cool. And then
I've got them for 12 gauge. I think I've got 9mm, 45, 410. I've got a couple of other ones, but I can't remember what they are. I think I've got one in 7.62 Tokarev for some reason. I don't know why I have that.
That's weird. Yeah, but they make them for like a 410 that shoots a 380, and they make them for like a 20 gauge that shoots almost all the same stuff. So if you have one like a if you're in a state like California where you really can't own a lot of guns, and you've got a coach gun, like a break open double barrel, yeah, you could make that gun very versatile with the ammo available. Now, somebody that makes a cool set is, I don't know how to pronounce these guys. You're a gun guy, but is it Chiappa? Is that how you pronounce it?
Chiappa.
Chiappa, like Arnold. It's like Gutzl the Chiappa. It's like that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So those guys, they make these for 12 gauges, and they make a set of like 8, and it's expensive. It's like $370, but it's a set of 8 rifled chamber inserts. And yeah, they're all for a 12 gauge. So you can basically fire 9 different cartridges out of that single 12 gauge. So I just think it's very versatile. One other thing that's very weird is, if you're familiar with 26.5 millimeter flare guns. This is like a World War II type flare gun.
I love these things.
I love them. It's getting the flares is tough. It's hard to come by now. They're expensive. They're all like Korean War vintage. You can still buy them on Gunbroker. I have a bunch of these. But you can get a 12 gauge flare adapter so you can fire a standard Marine flare out of these things. And there's some good ones, like HK makes a pretty decent one. And this is, for people that don't know, this flare gun is it's a break open pistol, and it's a 26.5 millimeter caliber, so it's big, and it's a single shot pistol. But you can get chamber inserts for these that fire like 410 or 38 special. I have a couple of these for my 26.5 millimeter flare gun that I take in the airplane for a couple of different reasons. One, I want to have a flare gun in the airplane. It's a great thing to have in my crash kit. But two, if I happen to land somewhere where maybe handguns are not legal, then these pieces are separate and I'm not manufacturing a firearm. Now, neither one of us are FFLs. I can't give you legal advice here. We're not lawyers, but they do these ones for the flare gun, because you're turning a non-firearm into a firearm. They come with a piece of paper from the ATF, and I haven't read what it says, but I'm pretty sure it says something like, when you put this in, you're manufacturing a pistol. But it's just a really cool thing that if, it's a single shot, but it is a pistol. Now, this is really cool, and you might not know this about the 26.5 millimeter flare guns. The ones that don't have a tapered barrels, like the HKs, which are the good ones, that barrel, the outside diameter of it is about 30 millimeters. And so you can take a 30 millimeter like red dot adapter for a scope. So a little clamp that would go over a 30 millimeter scope tube that has a Picatinny rail on the top. And you can add a sight to the top of this flare gun that's just got a smooth finish on top.
I did not know that. That's really cool.
That's a gun thing I knew that you didn't. I gotta make a note of this date, because that's never gonna happen again. But yeah, I'll send you some photos of my flare gun. I don't know if I should post photos of my flare gun, but yeah, I have a 30 millimeter. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a clamp that has a Picatinny, a little 1-inch pick rail on top. So I have that on my HK flare gun, and I have a reflex sight on top of it, and it's pretty well dialed. That little 38 special and 410, which also fires 48 long Colt. They're both rifled. It's only about, an inch of rifling maybe, but they are rifled. And at 10 yards, I'm remarkably accurate with that flare gun. Now, these are single action, so there's like no blowback. These things, all the recoil is going right into your hand, and these things are hard plastic, so you can't do it all day. But it's just a cool, versatile thing to have. So yeah, look up these 26.5 millimeter flare guns. You just want to fire cheap flares out of them. You can get a 12 gauge maritime flare adapter. But if you want to fire cartridges out of them, there is somebody that sells those, and they do sell a 22 long rifle insert, which is kind of cool too, because they're cheap and it doesn't have a lot of recoil. But yeah, I have a reflex sight on my flare gun that's in my crash kit in the airplane.
That is epic.
Yeah, I'll send you photos. So yeah, you can actually, it's just happenstance that the outside diameter, now, like the Polish ones that are a tapered barrel, I won't fit on those. But the ones that are just a flat, straight tube, a 30 millimeter scope, like red dot adapter, fits right on the end of that barrel.
I'm going to have to get one of these HK ones and definitely try it out.
So anyway, what's your, I'm glad we could have talked for an hour about guns. What's your next one?
Okay, so this one is very weird. I'm going to call myself out on this one, but
okay.
To give you a little bit of backstory, a few years ago, I was playing handyman in the basement. I was changing out the washing machine hoses from the rubber ones to those steel braided nylon, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be better for the water. They're supposed to be more durable and things like that.
Less likely to spring a leak and ruin everything in your basement.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I thought I was doing everything right, and I turned off the water, disconnected the hoses, and kind of let them drop. And the residual water that was in that hose dripped down and hit the outlet for the washing machine. So it hit the 220 outlet, and it did arc it and explode it
Oh, that's cool.
right against the exposed insulation because it was an unfinished basement.
Okay.
I've been deployed. I have seen RPGs hit fully loaded fuel trucks, and I've never seen fire move that fast. It was instantly all the way up the walls and licking across
Wow.
the ceiling. So that's what spawned this. Got the fire out, got it extinguished, called the fire department anyways. They came in with their thermal cameras and said, yeah, you got everything, blah, blah. Called an electrician to double check that the breaker panel wasn't completely fucked. It wasn't. Thankfully, it was just an outlet. But lesson learned. Where this prep came from, you have an idea of now. But we kind of got, for lack of a better term, paranoid about a fire starting in the house while we were in our upstairs bedroom. Middle of the night, we forgot to turn the oven off, or lightning strike or something like that, or outlet overload. TV catches fire in the middle of the night because it's from Korea, or I don't know. Anyways, we set up a battle rope anchor. We took a piece of workout equipment, those big battle ropes that you shake your hands up and down and get the isometric toning in your arms.
You got to be the best at exercising.
We took one of those and drilled into the header for our bedroom window and just left it bolted up there. And then we took, again, some climbing rope and we preset carabiners on there so that it was just a quick lock on and toss the rope so that we could get out. And then we took, and I've got them here, we actually bought fire rescue bags so that we could scoop all of the dogs into the bags, and we've got carabiners on every single one of these, connect them to that line. One of us is down on the ground pulling and getting the dogs off of that
just
line.
Toss the dogs out.
And we did test it.
Wow.
It did hold one of our dogs, and she came out at the bottom because the way that house was, it was kind of a second story window going into a downslope driveway. She came out the window, got all the way to the bottom, opened it up, and she was just, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. I like this game.
Okay, so you didn't permanently damage the dog.
We came up with a plan to, if we have a fire in the middle of the night, because all the dogs stay in that room with us, one of us opens the window and is going for setting up the line, tossing it, and getting the first bag ready to go. The other one is just going around with bags and hooking them over dogs, pulling and zipping them closed. So all 5 dogs we could get out of a second story window if needed be.
That's impressive. I mean, yeah, people usually don't think about the pets and the kids and the animals. They're like, oh, I just have a ladder, throw it over the edge and we'll all get out. But you're right. There may be pets or people in your house that can't just climb a ladder.
And these things, I think they're called baby bags. Let me see here.
Yep.
Baby rescue.
Okay, sure.
They're supposed to be flame resistant. They are breathable. They're tough nylon, but they actually come with that little throw rope that you were talking about. It's got hitches on it. So if necessary, you could drop a child into one, zip it closed, and then lower it down up to 30 feet using this step rope. So you're not giving yourself rope burn. It's just hitting it with your thumb to drop it down.
Somebody made $1 million off that on Shark Tank.
If that wasn't on Shark Tank, I'm surprised. But yeah, it was created by firemen for that purpose. And having a way out of a second or third or whatever level you live on, especially if you live in a condo or apartment or something like that, having a way to get out if something goes wrong, that's one of our weird preps.
Okay, that's pretty bizarre. I've got one. This is pretty weird. This is a weird one. And this could go either like the, oh man, super safety, or you're a psychopath. But so maps. And okay, that's not super weird, right? But a custom map of your area that is centered on your home And there is a company that makes these. It's called MyTopo. If you go to mytopo.com, you can go create a map by putting in your address, or, wherever you want to be, whether it's your bug out location or whatever, but put in your address and it will center the map on your home. And then you can get these in like a USGS topographical map. You can get it in like a topo enhanced map, which I like. That's kind of got it's got the roads and structures and things like that. And you can get it like in a USGS topo with shaded relief, or you can get it in just an aerial photo, like a Google Earth photo. And it's got, in rural areas like where I am, it has all the roads, and it even has like driveways, and it has little dots where every structure is. I don't know where it gets that information, but like there's a dot where my house is on this map. And it's got parks and bridges, and you can get them printed with a bunch of different grids. So like, Chris, you can get them printed with like the military grid, or you can just get them with like lat long on them. But think about in a grid down, or a GPS down, or a cell service outage, or an internet outage, or an EMP, or a CME. There's all these times where Google Maps on your phone just isn't going to work. And so these things, for about $40, you can get one that's a pretty tight scale, like it's 1 to 10,000 scale, which is a good scale, right? Like that's pretty blown up. And it's about 3 feet by 4 feet, with the center of it being on your home. And I'm looking at mine. I bet it's like, it might be like a 3 mile by 4 mile. It might be something like that. Like it's quite a bit of space. If you're in a neighborhood, you're going to see a whole lot of stuff. But, I kind of got the idea from I Am Legend. Remember where Will Smith was walking around with his little makeshift map, and he was like,
oh, yeah.
What houses did I check off? And he's like checking off the box when he scavenges. I kind of got the idea from there, but it's really not so much for, I'm going to loot my neighbor's home, but it's more of the, if we have trees down over the roads, and I can say, oh, hey, look, I know there's a tree here, and it's for an extra, I think that $40 I quoted you is for a laminated map. And so I have a laminated map with dry erase markers. And so I can literally say, hey, I can put an X. The road is closed here. There's a roadblock here. There's power lines over the road here. And I can mark out like my property lines and things like that. So I have this sort of living, working map of my area. And in the neighborhoods, which I thought was really cool, is like if you're in a city neighborhood, it's got your blocks and the grids and all that stuff. But when you get the one with the enhanced like topographic and the shaded relief, it actually shows you where like the bathymetric lines, or the topographic lines, like it shows you where the water will drain when the water stops draining the way it's supposed to.
That's a lifesaver.
It's kind of cool that it's like, it shows you this topographical overlay of your neighborhood with, topo relief. So obviously, and you know this, Chris, you have to know how to read a map to get everything out of this. You have to have some working knowledge about topographic lines and things like that. But that's easy to learn. And so not so much for me was it for navigation, although it could be, but I got one that's just hanging on my wall. It's centered on my home. I know where my neighbors' homes are. I've got a scale. I know how far it is to every neighbor's home, and I know which roads do what. And if there was a tree down, if I heard someone on shortwave radio say, hey, there's a tree down at this road, I could take my little dry erase pen and I could make an X there, and I could figure out better routes to and from my home. So anyway, just kind of a cool idea. mytopo.com, you can type in your address and get a custom topographic grid-lined map of any area you want. And you can get the super blown up scale, and it's a 3 by 4 foot map, and it's about $40. There's cheaper ones too.
Still sticking with the dry erase pens over the grease pencils, huh?
I knew you were going to call me on that. But, as you said in episode 2, Chris, that the grease pencil, it's hard to get off.
It can be. It does take a little bit more leverage and elbow grease than
I
your
did
alcohol
go buy
pens or...
I went and bought a box of 12 of those. So I do have, you're right. Someday when the dry erase markers dry up, I will have to move to grease pens. Now, the dry erase markers, they have a sharper point on them, right? You can get pretty granular, pretty detailed with those. But yeah, I could sharpen down a grease pencil. I do have a bunch thanks to you. So, Yeah, so the map. What we're gonna go for a while here. I apologize. We're probably gonna go a little bit longer, but what's your next one?
My next one, I've had this for probably 15 years. It is an infrared or high visible rescue beacon.
Mm-hmm.
So the version that I have is called an MS-2000. It's a waterproof strobe beacon used for water rescue.
Oh yeah, I know him well. Sure.
But you can use that to attract attention to your position from a long distance. So
Mm-hmm.
if you do get flooded out and the National Guard is coming in on helicopters, you turn that bad boy on and they know where you are from 10 miles out.
Now, can you set this to IR or high vis? Is there a switch?
There's a shield that goes over it.
Oh, that makes sense. Sure. So it just
So
filters out visible light and only allows like 950 nanometers through that are visible
exactly.
in your night vision. That's cool.
Now, the one that I have, it charges a capacitor off of the battery, so it sounds like the old school camera flash when it's charging up, and then it pops, and then you hear it charging up again, and then pop and charge and pop, and it's probably 50,000 volts that it's charging into there just to get that bright of a flash. But when it goes off, if you're even looking at a white wall and have it in your hand behind your back, it's going to be that bright. You don't want to do that.
And how long will this thing run on a battery charge? How long will it just keep flashing?
I've had it run for about 30 hours,
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
and it was still going. And at that point, I had turned it on with the intention of seeing if it would run for a full hour, and then I completely spaced it and walked away and came back the next day, and I was like, oh, I have no idea when that died. No, it was still going because I opened the
That's
door and flashbanged myself.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, so that's actually really cool because you think about it, like if you're just, stranded in the woods or whatever, you just pop this thing off and don't think about it and let it go overnight, and hopefully rescuers will see you. And yeah, same thing in a more tactical situation, you can turn the night vision shade on, and if people in your group have night vision goggles, then you can use that to discreetly give away your position if you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Precisely
awesome.
what it's for. Now, the other signaling thing that we have in one of our preps is it's called a VS17 panel. I don't know if you have any experience with these. They're bright, hot pink and like hunter orange. And it's just this super thick, heavy duty nylon. But we actually, when I was deployed, we would put them over the hood of a Humvee to signal different units.
Oh, sure.
But if you if you've got a VS17 panel, and they pack up into about the size of a notebook,
Mm-hmm.
you could signal that orange means one thing, pink means another thing, orange on top means one thing, pink on top means another. So you can come up with a whole bunch of different color codes on what you want each series to mean, kind of
Oh,
like the old flag signaling
of course. Yeah.
in
Semaphore.
1800s navies. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
semaphore, that's what it's called.
Yeah. They still
Semaphore
do it
flags.
today. Yeah. Bravo Zulu, man. It's not just in the 1800s.
But yeah, you can set up those pink and orange sides to be your own type of semaphore flags.
Oh,
We used to do it all the time when I was deployed. If you see orange with a pink stripe across it, that's command element. If you see orange with no stripe, that means it's
Mhm.
NCO's vehicle, etc. And it made it very, very easy to distinguish who was who on the battlefield as it was changing.
Yeah, and I bet you could change that code up every couple of days too, right? If you wanted to, you say, hey, we're going to, code Sierra 1 today, and then everybody knows in their notebook what all the things mean, right? You could change all the meanings, and then if someone gets wise to your, whatever your code is, then yeah, you could change that up. That's awesome. That's actually a really good idea.
And
So
they're cheap.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So my next one, this is well, we have two left. So I don't know if anybody knows about these. This is an Amazon item that I discovered accidentally, and I don't know if anybody's heard of these, but you can get an LED light bulb that just goes in your home like every other screw-in light bulb in your house that has a battery backup built in. And they're, for like a name brand one, they might be $10 each. For like a GE branded one, for like a no name brand, maybe they're $7 each. But these are really cool that if you ever have a power outage in the middle of the night, I've got a couple in my bathroom, and I've got one in my bedroom closet, and I've got one in the light on my nightstand, and then one on the nightstand in my guest room. But you wouldn't know that it's a light. It's just it's just a light bulb. There's nothing special about it. But when the power goes out and you flip that switch, it still works. It's just a very cool idea. If you Googled LED light bulb with battery backup, you'd find them. They just look like a normal light bulb. I think they might be a little dimmer when the power's out, but they literally charge off the AC power in your home. You never know you have them. And then, yeah, if you have a power outage in the middle of the night, you know which lights still work. And I know anybody who's experienced a power outage knows this, that you instinctively walk into the bathroom and turn the light on, even when you know it doesn't every time, right? You're like, oh, the light doesn't work, I better turn it on. But with these little gadgets, they will turn on, and it's just kind of cool. So, for me, yeah, I do get frequent power outages, and I have to go start the generator or my battery backup system. And so if power goes out in the middle of the night, I can reach over and click on my nightstand light just like I always would. And I want to say these little guys, they work for a while. Like they've got like a 5-hour runtime on them. So that's for like an 8-watt LED, which is like a 60-watt equivalent. They've got a pretty decent runtime. So if you experience a pretty decent power outage, and you can still, turn the lights on in the bathroom. And so you could put these everywhere if you've got an unlimited amount of money. For me, I just kind of wanted, the bathroom, the closet, and the nightstand, so I can turn them on when the power goes out and kind of situate myself, get dressed in the middle of the night, and go turn the generator on.
I like that. And it keeps you clean and dry for longer because you're not stumbling out the door with just half-tied shoes. You actually have enough to work with.
You're not pissing on your foot, yeah. You've got a little light you can turn on, and yeah, like I said, it being on, it will last for 5 hours. So anyway, those little things, check them out. I just think it's a really cool idea. Just an LED light bulb, you screw it into the socket like any other LED, but it has a battery backup built in. And I've got them kind of spread out the house in key places where I know I'll need them.
I'm gonna have to check those out because
they're inexpensive. It's a really cool idea. And when I do this a lot where something may seem expensive, but when you have it, you're like, oh my God, I am a genius. So
yep.
Anyway, so that's mine. What's your second to last one?
So this is gonna sound weird, but hear me out on it.
Okay, they all sound weird.
I just looked it up on Amazon. You can get 60 of them for $7.
Okay.
Velcro cable management strips.
You're talking about like just the ones you would like tie up your phone cable with when you're not using it, right? Just like a little Velcro
Bingo.
wrap. Yeah. Okay.
Bingo. But you can actually link those together to create longer straps if you need to bundle sticks up for things like firewood. If you needed to attach something that you found to your pack, like say you needed to, I don't know, you looted somebody's house for their 30 carbine and you decide to strap an ammo can to your bag, you're going to have back problems. Chiropractors in the apocalypse are not going to be easy to find. But
right.
If you needed to attach something to your pack, if you need to bundle sticks up for firewood, if you need to create signage or armbands or temporary cover and concealment, relay messages to members of your group with signaling, anything like that, a 60-pack of these for $7. We keep a roll of them in each of our bags just because.
Because they're super versatile.
They're great for wrapping up things like extension cords and keeping those organized. So when an end comes loose, it doesn't hang you up and stop you from going somewhere. They're fantastic and they're super, super cheap. They didn't make the under $1 list, but they're definitely worth it.
And yeah, so it's interesting because you're right. Velcro is an amazing thing, right? No wonder the aliens gave it to us. But if you pull them, it's interesting when you lay them out together. Like you said, you can double, triple, quadruple these things up, and we're pulling them straight. They're incredibly strong. They're very easy to peel apart. So if you had them like in a band around something, I'm thinking like a stack of wood or something, it would be incredibly strong because you're not peeling them apart. You're pulling kind of vertically.
Yeah, and going camping with them, I've lifted probably 40, 45 pounds in each arm carrying them like that. And the bundles of wood made it all the way back, didn't lose anything. They were
Sure.
wrapped tightly. So
And the
yeah,
makeshift splint, right? There's some first aid uses for those too. You could easily, if you would just a straight stick, you could easily fabricate a splint out of 4 or 5 or 6 of those, right?
yes. And that's
Yeah.
going to be where, depending on the strength and quality of the Velcro itself, you may have to double, triple, quadruple up just to get it to stay. But yes, improvisation is key with those.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and there's a bunch of different kinds of Velcro. I just learned this recently that, like, there's the standard what they call hook and loop, but then there's like that ball on ball design where both sides look exactly the same. I think it's still called Velcro, but it's kind of like a mushroom on a mushroom in the way they go together, and they're insanely strong, like very
Yep.
strong. Yeah, it's almost like a Lego.
And those ones you can probably use as an apocalypse pedophile, or not pedophile.
All right, you're gonna have to edit that out.
I may or may not. Pedo egg, the little pedicure eggs.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
probably
you
use
could
the
scrub
the
yourself
Velcro on
down.
that.
Actually, I'm going to give you that. It kind of is a pedo and a file. You're right. If you didn't put the word together, it's not creepy. You just happen to assemble them together, and it's weird. But you're right. It is. Yeah. It's pedo
Brain work
meaning
good.
feet. Great. Brain works so good. All right. My last one, and this is something that we can talk about forever. And I know specifically a couple of our listeners that will probably have some commentary here. But gasoline, and obviously having gas on backup kind of sounds like a no-brainer. I get where you're coming with that. But let me tell you, I think that a lot of people don't really think about it, like what gas they buy. And gas at the pump, just so everybody listening, and I apologize if I'm insulting the really smart people, but gas at the pump has ethanol in it. Ethanol attracts water, and that gas does not last as long. So you can buy like a fuel additive, like I'm trying to think what Stabil is one, so you can buy these fuel additives that kind of attract the ethanol. But the better way to go is super clear gas. So if you Googled like super clear gas near me, anybody who rides dirt bikes knows what this is, but basically this is gas with no additives. It is gas with no ethanol. It's not street legal gas, but your car will love it. It just doesn't have the ethanol in it, which is more for environmental purposes. So if you get this kind of gas, this super clear, they call it, it will last a lot longer. It's higher octane. It's like the 92 octane. So it's like super gas, but they call it clear because it has no ethanol in it. Now, you can put stock Stabil, and this will last for a very long time. I'm not kidding. I've probably had gas that's 2 years old, and I've treated it with Stabil, and it works. It doesn't varnish or whatever they call it. It works. Now, the other thing that I stock is avgas, and anybody who's not a pilot probably doesn't really know why or what that is. But this isn't jet fuel. This isn't JP8. But avgas, you can all buy it. You can go down to your local airport, your small little municipal airport. You can buy avgas. Now, avgas is 100 octane, and it is leaded. Now, we've all heard that lead is bad. Lead is actually really, really good for like anything without a catalytic converter, anything without an O2 sensor. So your two-stroke stuff, your dirt bikes are going to love this. I run it through all of like my yard tools, like my chainsaws. They eat this stuff up. And lead's actually kind of good for certain engines. It lubricates. So it's really good. But I have two 15-gallon canisters, two 15-gallon like rolly things. One with super clear and one with avgas. And what I do is I have these things. I use them all year long, like in my ATV that is newer and has a catalytic converter and has a O2 sensor. I run the super clear in that. And in the yard implementations, I run the avgas. And like we say, always keep your tank in your car half full. It's the exact same thing with the fuel at your house. So I have 30 gallons of gas total, 15 of each of these fuels. And when I get down to 15 gallons total, when both of those are half full, usually somewhere around a year, I don't use a lot of it, I dump all of that in my old Bronco that doesn't have a catalytic converter or an O2 sensor or anything like that. And the Bronco loves it because it's all super high octane and leaded and stuff. And then I go and fill them both up and get 30 more gallons of gas, 15 of each. And so you can run this in everything. You can run this in your cars. The one thing about avgas is, like I said, it's bad for the catalytic converters. And it's kind of weird. Basically, what leaded fuel does it essentially poisons the catalytic converter, so it kind of coats it. I think they're mostly like platinum. I guess that's why we turn them into meth, because they're precious metals. But it coats those precious metals with lead deposit, and it significantly reduces its ability to convert this harmful emission into like the less harmful gases. So it effectively renders it useless. But it'll also piss off your O2 sensor in your car. Obviously, in an SHTF event, you can run this in any car. I mean, are you really going to care about this little orange light on your dash in the apocalypse? So, yeah, you can run avgas in anything. It is bad for. It's going to be a very expensive fix eventually for your new vehicles. But in SHTF, you've got all this gas you can mix up. But specifically, now I have an airplane, so if I needed to, that's 15 gallons of gas gets me a couple hours in the airplane if I really needed to bug out. But I just like the avgas because the two-stroke stuff loves it. The chainsaws love it. The older dirt bikes with a carburetor love it. So you may have to retime some of your distributors for higher octane gas, I think, because it burns faster. One of our listeners, Forrest, I think, will probably tell us all about it. But if I'm wrong, let me know.
Yeah.
He'll be
Yes.
all over it. But
When he catches his name, he's going to be like, "Oh, yep, you're."
But anyway, so
Yeah.
that's kind of what I do. I have the 92 octane super clear gas, and I've got the avgas, and they both kind of have different purposes. In SHTF, you can use them in anything. You can use them in any of your vehicles. Having that gas could be priceless. But I just sort of let it get down to halfway, and then I dump it in my old vehicle and run it, and then I go down to the airport and the super clear gas station, and I fill them both up. So there's a reason to have both, but I think a lot of people who aren't pilots don't really think about avgas because they think it's like special. And I'll tell you that it's about the same price. They're both super clear and avgas. They probably generally run maybe $2 a gallon more expensive. So it's expensive gas, but
About
it
the
will
price
last.
of diesel.
Right. Yeah, diesel gets expensive these days, but it's expensive. Maybe you're going to pay, $5-6 a gallon right now depending on your state, for super clear and for avgas, but both insanely valuable. And like I said, you can run them in anything if you have to, but I have a certain use for avgas at home. I have a certain use for my super clear. And then I let it get down to half because, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And then I go fill them both up.
I like it.
So
I like it.
how are we going to round this one out? What's your last one?
You
Tell me
know,
something really weird.
So I had one on the list, and I'm going to replace it.
Okay.
This one is going to depend on your locale. This is going to depend on your local laws. I'm not saying go out and get one.
All
I
right.
will
Regionally
say-
specific. Here we go.
It takes practice.
Okay.
A lockpick set or a lockpick kit.
Yeah.
They
That's a good
take
one.
practice, but oh my Jeebus. If you ever
Mhm.
need one and you know how to use it, fastest and most discreet way into a building that you don't have a key to. And
Yeah.
it'll work on things like lockers. It'll work on file cabinets. It'll work on standard doors. It'll work on gun
Padlocks.
safes. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
If it takes a standard key,
Mhm.
it will work. So that's where you really do have to practice with it and know what you're doing. They're not cheap. They're
Mhm.
a good quality one is going to run $120 to $150, and then you've got to get the lock to practice on.
Oh,
Unless
right.
you want to be sitting out in front of your apartment, just clicking away and looking like a mad person. But that can be one of those things where your life depends on that more than you realize, and you don't know it until you've already used it.
Sure. Yeah. And also not just the pick itself. And I wish I knew how to do that. I don't know how to pick locks, but I have used bypass tools, like little shims that some of these cheaper Chinese locks, people may not know that all the key does is turn the top part of that cylinder. The bottom part of the cylinder can just turn on its own. And so these little shims and a lot of these cheap padlocks, you just shove something smaller than the key all the way in there and you can unlock it without moving the key, the tumbler, the cylinder part. So bypass tools are a big one. And one thing that I do have along those lines in my get home bag is a fire pick, right? And these are for bypassing those locks on like any external door to a big industrial building, any door that you would push on a bar from the inside to open it. it generally has like a one-way latch. So the latch pushes one way to close them, and that's how they close and lock.
You're
But
talking
you
about
can't
schools,
the school,
hospitals,
yeah,
any
any
sort
of
of large
yeah,
industrial
any
building.
industrial area, yeah. And so any of those doors that have like a little silver plate is the only thing. So there's some handle, you can't pull on them. All that silver plate is doing is covering up that sort of one-way latch. And so this fire pick, it looks kind of like the old school, like you know, door lock shim or something that you would pick a old car door with, like a Slim Jim. It looks kind of like that, but they're a little smaller, quite a bit smaller, honestly, because they just have to get through that little metal pad. But I have one in my get home bag. I have practiced with that, and obviously they don't open every lock, but they open things like you're talking about, big buildings, schools, anything that has that little silver plate on the outside and no way to open it from the outside, no handle, no door lock. Those can usually be bypassed with a fire pick. They call them a fire pick because firemen use them all the time. They're very efficient with them. So if you're going into an apartment building or something, yeah, these kinds of locks you can bypass with a fire pick. And I would say it's way easier than lock picks. If you want to start somewhere, you could try a fire pick, and you're going to get way better with it way quicker than you would with with like lock picks.
They're also called a Williams key.
Oh, I haven't heard that, really.
And that might be a name brand, but
I was thinking
them,
fire pick might be a names brand, but yeah, you're right. One of the two is probably
I've
some
heard them
kind of
called Williams keys before as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, having access to areas that are normally closed off, that
Mhm.
could be the difference between survival of the apocalypse and just being another loot drop.
It could be a lifeline. You're exactly right. So this was pretty fun, Chris. I think I bet I would wager that everybody listening learned at least one thing. I know I learned a couple of things. So, yeah, I bet that everybody listening learned at least one thing. So hopefully we are bringing you actionable, timeless intel every week. That's the goal here, right?
It's just up to you to be your own stakeholder and put it to use.
That's right.
And next week, we're going to come back with a new theory episode. We are alternating between theory and lists, and then we're going to shoot for every 10th episode. We're going to try to have a guest on.
Yeah, I liked that. I really liked having Andrew on. I think we could figure out the audio issues there. And you're right. Next week, we're going to try a theory thing. I've got one I'm working on. We got a lot of really good feedback on episode 3, which was kind of some big government-y stuff. And I'd like to do some sort of big government, up the skirt insider stuff. I just have to be very careful about security clearances and some non-disclosure agreements. So I'm trying to kind of dumb this thing down. But honestly, I have some very cool and stuff that you can relate to your own, actionable world. Not so much like big government episode 3, but more of here's what the government does, and I'm going to tell you all about it, and here's how you can relate that to your everyday life. So, and I think you're going to like it. So I'm working on something. Chris, I'll throw you kind of my outline. You can go over it. But yeah, I think that would be cool. Going back and forth between the list and the theory. We've said we're going to do that. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. So we'll give AC some time to see if we can sort out that one, or if we're going to go with a different theory episode next week. But we don't want to risk any sort of security clearances or anything like that. He's already done enough by risking his TSA pre-check for us.
It's true. I've done that a couple of times. You're right. I appreciate that.
But we will see you back here next week. And as always, remember, you are your own stakeholder.